James Miller was an ordinary man, living in a quiet suburb of Ohio. He had a steady job, a small but cozy house, and a loving family, his wife Emma and their two children, Sarah and Michael. To many, James's life seemed uncomplicated and straightforward, but beneath the surface, he wrestled with questions about purpose, responsibility, and what truly mattered in life. One autumn afternoon, while James was walking in the park with his daughter Sarah, who was 7 years old, she looked up at him with curious eyes and asked, "Daddy, why do some people seem happy all the time and others don't?" James paused for a moment, watching leaves fall gently from the trees. "Well, Sarah," he began carefully, "I think happiness isn't something that just happens. It comes from how we live our lives, the choices we make, and the lessons we learn." Sarah tilted her head, still unsure. "What kind of lessons?" James smiled and sat down on a bench, inviting Sarah to sit beside him. "There are some lessons in life that aren't really choices. They're like rules or requirements, things we have to understand if we want to live well." Over the next several days, James found himself thinking deeply about those requirements in life. What were those essential lessons? How could he explain them clearly to Sarah and, more importantly, live by them himself? His journey toward understanding began with a simple realization: life demands accountability. It's easy to blame others or circumstances when things go wrong, but true growth starts when we accept responsibility for our actions. One morning, after a difficult meeting at work, James decided to share this with Michael, his teenage son, who was struggling with school and friendships. "Michael," James said, "I know it's hard when things don't go your way. But one thing I've learned is that blaming others won't help. Taking responsibility, even when it's tough, is what makes you stronger." Michael looked at his father with a mix of frustration and curiosity. "But sometimes it's not my fault," he said. James nodded. "Sometimes it isn't. But how you respond is always your choice. Owning your part, even if it's small, helps you control what happens next." That conversation was a turning point for Michael. Over the next weeks, he started facing his challenges head-on instead of avoiding them. He even apologized to a friend he'd had an argument with and worked harder on his school projects. Meanwhile, Emma, James's wife, was learning her own set of lessons. She'd always been a caring person, but recently she realized that self-care wasn't selfish, it was necessary. Emma began to set boundaries, say no when she was overwhelmed, and prioritize her mental health. This, in turn, brought more balance and happiness into their family. One evening, as Emma and James talked over dinner, she shared, "I used to think putting myself first was wrong. But I'm learning that if I don't take care of myself, I can't really take care of others." James agreed wholeheartedly. That's a lesson everyone needs to learn. Taking care of yourself isn't a choice, it's a requirement if you want to be your best. As seasons changed, the Miller family grew closer, each member learning and practicing these essential life lessons. They discovered that kindness was another requirement, not just as a choice when convenient, but as a daily habit. When Sarah helped a new girl at school who was shy and lonely, James saw the impact of kindness beyond words. Helping others, even when you don't have to, makes the world better, James told his children. And it makes you better too. The lessons didn't stop there. The family confronted setbacks, like James's job being downsized and financial worries creeping in. But through these trials, they held on to resilience, another requirement in life. It wasn't about avoiding hardship, but learning how to bounce back stronger. James remembered his own father telling him, "Life will knock you down, but you have to get back up. That's not optional." Years passed, and the lessons continued unfolding. The Millers learned that gratitude wasn't a choice but a daily requirement to appreciate life's gifts, no matter how small. They practiced forgiveness, understanding that holding on to anger only hurt themselves. They embraced humility, knowing that admitting mistakes was a step toward growth. In time, James realized these lessons shaped the foundation of not just his family, but his entire outlook on life. These weren't merely good habits or suggestions. They were essential rules that no one could skip if they wanted a life filled with meaning and peace. One spring afternoon, as Sarah, now a teenager, asked James about happiness again. He smiled and said, "Remember what I told you years ago? Happiness comes from living by the lessons life requires, not the ones we just choose when it's easy." Sarah nodded, wiser now. "So it's like the difference between a choice and a responsibility." "Exactly," James said. "And when you live by those responsibilities, being kind, responsible, resilient, grateful, you build a life worth living." As the sun set behind the trees, James felt a deep sense of peace. Life might not always be easy, but with these lessons as requirements, it was always worth it.